Hello students, this is Dr. Sujata Magdum, Assistant Professor in Zoology, KTHM College, Nashik. I'll be dealing with biological chemistry for third year BSc students. Now this is just an introductory lecture wherein I'll be discussing about the subject and the different topics what we are going to study in this current semester. When you see around yourself, you get to know that there are different kind of living creatures surrounding you. Say for example, some of them can be seen with the help of your naked eyes and few of them which you cannot see with your eyes as such. And so we can classify them as microscopic or macroscopic organism, right? Microscopic organism, they are basically unicellular in nature as their body is composed of single cell, and because of this tiny nature you are not able to see them without the aid of microscope. Hence we call them as microscopic unicellular organism. The best example which I have shown here is of E. coli, and then there are different kinds of viruses also which you cannot see with your eyes, but with the help of microscope, of course, their identity becomes much more clearer. The other group of organisms which surrounds us, they are much more larger in size and therefore we call them as macroscopic organism. Now these macroscopic organism, they can be viewed because their body is composed of large number of cells, and as their body is composed of large number of cells, we can classify them or we can call them as macroscopic organism or multicellular organism. The example which I have shown in the picture is one of them is belonging to or it is representing the animal group, and the second one is representing the plant group. So whether it is unicellular E. coli viruses or whether it is animals or plants, they form the living world surrounding to us. So there are certain characteristic features of the living world which we can summarize as Mrs. Green. Now what does this Mrs. Green means? These are representing the words, rather I should say the alphabets of Mrs. Green. It gives the characteristic feature of different groups of organisms which are present in the living world. For example, M stands for movement in Mrs. That means whether it is unicellular organism like E. coli or whether it is an animal or whether it is a plant, all of them, they show an important characteristic feature of movement. They move from one place to another place. This type of movement is much more clearer in case of animal groups as compared to plants. But even in the case of plants, the movement can be observed because there is movement in the twig of the plant, the movement in the flower, the movement in the bud, and so on. Right? So it forms an important characteristic of living creature. Moreover, all these organisms which are surrounding to us, they show the important phenomena of respiration. They respire. Now what is respiration? Respiration is exchange of gases. Exchange of gases between the living creature and that of the environment. Now you may wonder what is the need of this respiration. It is not just merely exchange of gases, but whatever gases in the form of oxygen is seen entering into the body will be utilized by the bodily cell for the purpose of oxidation of food, and that in turn is responsible for generating different types of energy yielding component into ATP. That means it is useful in the process of oxidation of food, right? Therefore, this also forms an important living characteristic of living organism. The third prime character of living creature is they show response to stimulus. So this can be seen with the help of small experiments, and you must have done it into your school days, wherein you can see that the plant grows towards the light. That is positive phototropism you can say, or the roots, they always grow towards the darker end into the ground. That is positive geotropism you can say. In the same way, if in terms of animals, if I want to explain this topic of response to stimulus, the simple is if one is pricking a needle to the hand, immediately we remove the hand. This is showing response towards stimulus. So this is also shown only and only by the living creatures and none other organisms as such. There are different types of stimulus which can be showing their interaction with the living forms. For example, in terms of microorganism, if there is addition of undesired material into the culture, it immediately the organism they try to move towards the periphery. Once again, we can say this is an important feature of response to stimulus, right? Then comes the growth factor. Now, what is growth? Growth is increase in the size, right? Now, this growth is shown only by the living organism in the form of increase in the size. In case of animals and plants, it is very easily viewed with the help of eyes. But the same form can be seen even with the unicellular organism also. And this is very essential because unless and until it grows and attains certain specific size, it cannot attain the maturity. And unless and until the cell is mature, it cannot perform certain kind of important functions in the lifetime like reproduction, right? So the next important feature is the reproduction. Now reproduction is simply, you can say, a type of multiplication. In the sense, here the number of same type of individuals is added into the community or added into the group, and this is essential to have continuity in life. Now the process of reproduction could be seen within the plant or it can be seen amongst the organism. Therefore, we can classify them as the self-pollination or it can be classified as the cross-pollination. Further, the involvement of sex into the process of reproduction can be categorized as asexual type of reproduction or sexual type of reproduction, wherein we can say that in case of asexual type of reproduction, there is no involvement of the sex cell, whereas in case of sexual reproduction, there is involvement of the sex cell in the form of sperm and ova, right? And whether it is asexual or sexual type of reproduction, both of them they contribute in adding the large number of individual to the community or to the environment as such, and this is essential to have continuity in life. Now all these living organisms they show and one more important feature that is excretion. Now excretion is removal of unwanted waste, undesired waste which is generated into the body. It could be the gaseous product that is in the form of carbon dioxide, or it could be certain nitrogenous product in the form of ammonia, urea or uric acid. And these excretory waste they should be removed from the body because unless and until they are removed, the harmony of the cell will not be maintained or homeostasis within the body will not be maintained. So what does it mean? It means that if they are retained into the body, they means I consider here carbon dioxide, urea, uric acid or ammonia. If they are retained within the body, they will hamper the pH of the bodily fluid or the surrounding media of the cell or within the cell as well, and as a result the metabolic activities which are seen occurring into the cell will not be performed in a normal condition, and that is why it is very essential that timely these excretory product they should be eliminated. So this forms an important characteristic of living creatures itself. Further, to have all these activities, that is movement, respiration, response to stimulus, growth, reproduction, excretion, all these are totally dependent on the process of feeding. That means all living organisms they tend to show an important process or important phenomena of feeding which enable them to get provided with different type of nourishment, and depending on the mode of feeding they can be defined as autotrophic or heterotrophic in nature. Autotrophic group of organisms have the ability to synthesize their own food material by themselves, whereas heterotrophic organisms, they are totally dependent on autotrophic. The best example of autotrophic group you all know is the plants, because with the help of photosynthesis in presence of oxygen and sunlight, these organisms, these green plants, they are having the ability to synthesize carbohydrate, proteins or lipids within themselves. Whereas the animal group, that is, you can say cattle's, man, including man, or the lower group of organisms, all of them, they are totally dependent on autotrophic group of organisms for the supply of food. And in the same manner, if you wonder about the microscopic organism, therein we can say that most of these microorganisms, they are seen feeding either onto the plant material or the animal material, and then we can classify them as the uh, holotypic organism, heterotrophic organism, or saprozoic or saprophytic, and things like that. So I'm not going to get into the details of the different types of feeding which are seen into the living system. What is essential to understand in this slide is whatever living organism, whether microscopic or macroscopic, they are seen surrounding to us, they are showing the prime features or which can be categorized into seven different groups as movement, respiration, sensitivity, growth, reproduction, excretion, as well as nutrition, right? And then because of this, we can say that these group of organisms, these living creatures, they are highly organized, and these highly organized creatures are attaining this important phenomena because of the complex structure which is called as cell. So whether it is unicellular organism or whether it is multicellular organism, all of them, they show presence of a complex unit that is called as the cell, and this cell is defined as the structural and functional unit of life because it is showing the important phenomenal activities occurring within itself which enables the living system to live or sustain life. Now, what are the essential components of the cell? The cell is basically composed of cell wall, cell membrane, and this cell wall or cell membrane, it forms the limiting membrane of the cell. It forms the boundary of the cell, and within this boundary there is the fluid component of the cell which is called as cytoplasm, and this cytoplasm, it includes the different essential organelles within itself like the nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, ribosome, Golgi complex, centrioles, and so on. Now, all these different types of cell organelles, they have their own function. Like you can say nucleus, it brings about control and coordination within the cell, whereas endoplasmic reticulum is concerned with transportation of material. Ribosomes, you know, they are called as the protein factories. Mitochondria I have not mentioned here, but they are called as the powerhouse of the cell because the process of ATP synthesis, it occurs within the mitochondria, and likewise Golgi complex, they are involved in the phenomena of secretion. So all these different types of cell organelles which are embedded into the fluid matrix that is called as cytoplasm, they are in turn made up of organic components like proteins, carbohydrates, lipid, nucleic acid, vitamins and minerals. And now these organic components, it either forms the structural entity of the cell or it forms the functional entity of the cell. Structural entity, like you have studied in the lower classes, that is proteins, they are the building blocks of the body, we say. Why? Because whatever cell components are present in the form of cell membrane or you can say the organelle membrane, they are basically made up of proteins. Apart from that, whatever hormones we have, the enzymes what we have within the cell, they are proteinaceous in nature. Carbohydrate, you know, they are the energy yielding component. Fats or lipids, these lipids, They are acting as shock absorbing material in most of the cases, and at the same time, whenever there is need for excess energy, and if at all carbohydrates are totally absent, that means if the organism is in the starvation, in that condition the lipids will be converted into the energy yielding component. So it forms an additional supplier of ATP. Nucleic acid, it is seen present into the nucleus, and it includes DNA as well as RNA, which we can say is acting as genetic material of the organism, and therefore whatever character an organism shows, it is transmitted from generations to generation with the help of nucleic acid. And vitamins and minerals, they are needed into the traces, and these are essential to carry out the important functions or accelerate the functions of enzymes, we can say. Hence, all these functionality of the cell or its cellular nature is totally dependent on the composition of the cell. And this is what we are going to study in detail in this biological chemistry. Is that clear? So here, what is the need for describing all this? Because actually biochemistry or biological chemistry is an applied science, you can say, or applied subject wherein there has to be correlation made between the study of cell, the study of genetics, the study of molecular biology all together, and then it has to be correlated with the composition. Now this is because the cell's entity and its functionality is totally dependent on these essential different types of biomolecules. These are called as biomolecules. Why are they called as biomolecules? Molecules, you know, are the substances, or you can say they are made up of similar types of atoms, right? So these molecules, as they are seen present residing into the living entity, that is the cell, we call them as biomolecules, and because of their molecular size we can also call them as macromolecules. MACROMOLECULES, macromolecules, right? Now these macromolecules which we have discussed just now, that is either proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, nucleic acids, or you can say vitamins and minerals, all of them, they are composed of four essential components like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen, and all together it forms 96.3% of the cell, right? Whereas in addition to these four different types of elements, there are two more essential components like phosphorus and sulfur. So altogether from carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus and sulfur, the cell will have the total composition of these different types of elements, which is 99%. So you may wonder, what about this 1%? 1% is made up of inorganic substances like like sodium, potassium, calcium, phosphorus, iron and magnesium. So all together they form an essential component of this biomolecule, and their variation or permutation and combination leads to formation of proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, vitamins and minerals, or the nucleic acid, right? Now here, for your information, I have given the hyperlink for the syllabus. You can just go through the syllabus. I'll show you how to do that. Just click on this. When you click to this, you will get to know the syllabus of TYBSc. Okay. Thank you so much.